Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I see Commissioner Mohammed is on. Do I have Commissioners Ames, Messenger, and Commissioner Simmons? Do not believe so. Yeah, we'll give them just another minute here. Or Tanisha, if you know if any commissioners are not able to make it due to the holiday week, if they might be traveling or otherwise out, that would be great.
Hi, good morning, Commissioner Coy. Could you repeat what you said?
Do you know if any commissioners are anticipated being out of office today, given the holiday schedule? They might be traveling or otherwise unavailable.
Oh no, I don't know of any.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started, and then they will join. Oh, Commissioner Simmons, is that you? That's on?
Yes, it is. It's me. Good afternoon.
Wonderful.
Good
Welcome,
morning. I'm sorry.
welcome. No, you're totally good. You're totally good. We are just getting underway, and I do find that sometimes my Teams has to update before I join every once randomly.
Yep.
But it's always
Me
when I'm
this
running
morning.
tight. It's always
That was me this morning. I appreciate it. I'm sorry again. I apologize for my tardiness.
You're good. So good morning, everyone. This is Committee Chair Andrew Coy. I'd like to welcome you all to the Monday, November 24th Operations Committee meeting. If you've not done so, please mute your microphone. Anyone who does not mute their phone may be muted by the call moderator or removed from the call. I'll now read a roll call of the board to identify who is present. Please identify yourself first before speaking for the record. Commissioner Mohammed.
Mohammed present.
Commissioner Simmons.
Simmons present.
Commissioner Ames Messenger. Members of the public who would like to provide comment to this committee can do so by signing up the day of before the meeting. Members of the public interested in submitting public comment during board committee meetings may sign up by email at public.comment@bcps.k12.md.us. 5 people or groups can sign up for public comment. Types of email submissions, an email message attachment, a statement of no longer than 400 words may be read aloud by a board member or staff, or an email message attachment of a 3-minute video that will be broadcast during the board meeting. Finally, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering feedback or answering questions from the public. If you do have questions, though, follow-up or otherwise, or feedback to provide to the board, please email schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us, and the board office staff will provide a response to you. With that, I'm happy for us to get underway with our agenda here this morning. And the first item that we have is a fiscal year 27 budget update blueprint and development. And I believe Courtney Desabé will be presenting for this update. But if there's others joining him, welcome any and all members from the finance team on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Let me pull up the slide. All right. So this month's update is going to be a little more focused on our budget development process. So both the closeout of the FY26 budget and also the beginning of the FY27 process. So we're going to touch on 3 things. So our FY26 school funded enrollment based on our enrollment adjustments, the enrollment adjustment process, which is how that materializes for schools, and then the FY27 enrollment projection process. And I hope to clearly articulate the difference between the enrollment adjustments and the enrollment projections. I know the wording is similar, but we do want to give a little bit of background on the process. This slide gives a little bit of an overview on the steps for the budget development process, or at least the major steps. We break these down into over 300 different, smaller steps for the development process, but we try to sum it up here just for understanding. So where we are right now, is formulating the priorities and having school level priority discussions, as well as beginning the enrollment projection process, which is a multi-month process. And we'll talk about that a little bit. We just finished wrapping up the enrollment adjustments last month. So different enrollment types. We use enrollment and enrollment terminology frequently. And I know it can be confusing. We reference enrollment numbers, and sometimes it's hard to tell what it's referencing. And a lot of that depends on the point in time or the source. So we have what we call our official enrollment. So this is our 930 enrollment. It's what we submit to the state, and it's also what's used to determine the subsequent year's revenue. So that's what generally referred to as our official enrollment. The second main enrollment that we use is our projected enrollment. So this is when we're building the budgets in the spring. We know what the official enrollment was from the year before, and we use that as a basis for the projection, but we have an elaborate process for working on our projections, which we'll talk about. And that's what we use to build the budgets in the spring. And then we have our funded 930 enrollment in the fall, which is where we are now. So we used our projection in the spring to build the initial budgets. We get to September 30th, we do an actual count of students, and we now update school level enrollment and funded enrollment based on that updated 930 count. So we know we use the word enrollment a lot, but we just want to add a little bit of context as to what we're referring to, or some of the terminology that we're referring to when we reference enrollment and how these things tie together. So our funded enrollment. So this, like I said, is what we updated now based on the September 30th counts of students in the spring. So here what we're looking at is essentially a comparison of our projected enrollment in the spring with our funded enrollment in the fall. So how close were we from what we projected in the spring to where we ended up in the fall? As you can see, using these different breakdown groups, we overprojected slightly in our categories, but in most of these categories, you can see we're less than 1%, or all categories, we're less than 1% above, we had projected above what the actual enrollment was. So we're pretty pleased to be within that range. I think the average variance at the school level was about 5%. This is overall for the district, we were within 1% of our projection. So K-12, which is what we look at most often, we were 475 students below our projection. And we also looked at it, charter or traditional, which had the same percentage, 0.6%. So we're pretty pleased, again, like I said, to be under 1%, which is where we've been for the last few years. It's a testament, I think, to some of the methodology and updates that we do in our enrollment projection process. So the enrollment adjustment methodology. We know historically the enrollment adjustment process can be a large disruption for schools. Over the last few years, we've worked to mitigate that disruption as much as possible. We try to limit the amount of transactions that take place, and we also try to limit the magnitude of transactions that take place. So we're pleased to be able to continue that approach this year. Now, this is for traditional schools. Charters do a full adjustment, so every student and every dollar is adjusted for charter schools. For traditional schools, like I said, we try to mitigate the magnitude of the change. So we set thresholds over the last few years. One additional thing that we had to consider this year, of course, is we had additional time constraints with Phase 3 AMP. Right now we're getting ready to go live next month with Phase 3. And because of that, there are certain features or functionalities like P-Star that we need to shut down so we can transfer information and so forth. So we had a much smaller window to do enrollment adjustment related transactions than we normally would. So it's added impetus to sort of mitigate the change as much as possible. So we used a 10% decrease threshold. So basically we looked at schools' budgets in the spring compared to their post-enrollment adjustment budget. And we wanted to look at any school that had a 10% decrease in funding or greater. And those are the schools that we would do adjustments for. And for those schools, we would only do a 50% adjustment. So if one of the schools that was over 10%, say, for example, owed $1 million, they would only have to pay back $500,000. So again, this is reducing the amount of transactions, but also the magnitude of transactions for schools. Now, when we do that decrease threshold, there's a certain, sort of target dollar that we get back, and that's what we use to determine what the payback is. So we want the enrollment adjustments to be self-funding. We're not giving out more than we're getting back or vice versa. So that allowed us to set our payback threshold. The other thing to consider, and I'll talk about this in a couple of slides, is that as part of the enrollment adjustment process, we wanted to incorporate some additional funding. If the board recalls, when we brought the budget to the board in the spring, we knew at the time that there were some proposals for budget cuts, and we had built those into the budget. We knew that those were rescinded, and we told the board that we would make that adjustment to the school budgets in the fall with the enrollment adjustments. Again, trying not to do too many different things at different points in time and force change too frequently. So we wanted to incorporate the effect of that additional funding into the enrollment adjustment. So that means that we factored in that additional funding. So schools that would have lost did not lose as much, that sort of thing. So we made sure to incorporate those items, and I'll talk a little bit more about that additional funding in a couple of slides. Sorry. The sum of the enrollment adjustments was that there were only 4 schools that needed to do payback. So we just listed the schools here. We had 2 schools on the top end of the gainers who gained significant enrollment. Both schools gained over 140 students, which is excellent achievement. So these are the schools that we did mandatory rebalancing. So we provided support for those schools. So we had time scheduled 60 or 90-minute meetings for those schedules with staff from central office, from human capital, finance, special ed, all the related departments to support those schools in balancing their budgets. We also created a registration window for other schools who had gained significant enrollment but didn't receive additional funding so that they could discuss any requirements that they saw they had based on that change in enrollment. So we reviewed 5 additional schools and provided additional funding to those schools as well because of their changes in enrollment. Essentially, these were schools that had increased staffing, but they hadn't made it to the threshold for additional funding initially. But when we reviewed their individual budgets and the amount of their staffing increases and enrollment increases, they warranted additional support, so we provided that. So as I mentioned, when we presented the budget in the spring, it was with the assumption that there were going to be some reductions in some of the blueprint categories. Just before we took the budget to the board for approval, we knew that some of those changes were going to be rescinded, but there wasn't time to incorporate into the budget. And we had promised the board that we would do so in the fall as part of the enrollment adjustment process. So we calculated what the school share of that additional funding was, and we distributed to all the schools that qualified. Which is essentially just about every school. The exception was that any school that had received additional targeted assistance in the spring, greater than what they would have received as part of this funding, they didn't double down. If they got this funding early in the spring, and that's what counted. But we distributed that to the schools, and also, like I said, took that into account when going through the enrollment adjustments so that we can mitigate the enrollment adjustments as much as possible. The last section is on our enrollment projection process. So again, this is what we're using now to project the enrollment that we're going to be funding schools at in the spring as we build the FY27 budgets. So this process starts with us taking these 930 enrollment counts and the adjustments that we just did as the basis. We use a number of different methodologies. We use grade progression ratios. There's methodologies for entry grades. Some of them use 2-year averages. For kindergarten, we use capture rates. And, some cases we use 3 or 5-year weighted averages. So it depends on, a number of different items. It depends on, whether or not they just came out of swing space, if they're in a new building. Like we look for anomalies in their enrollment over the last 5 years to help determine, sort of what methodology is most effective. Additional factors that impact the projections are city population, birth counts, student demographic information, neighborhood indicators, feedback from school leaders, the building conditions, capacity, what can a building hold, any add-ons to a building, portables, et cetera. Program offerings, can also impact enrollment. And we make adjustments and changes to our methodology. I think the first step in our enrollment projection process every year is looking at what worked and what didn't work in the previous year's methodology. So we do a lot of data analysis. For instance, we've recently realized that in terms of our kindergarten capture rates, Whereas, we used to do a percentage of capture of birth counts, we found that there's a stronger correlation based on looking at mothers within a specific age category within the city of Baltimore. So there's a stronger correlation to that demographic and our kindergarten enrollment. So that was one adjustment in methodology. So we generally do reviews like that every year to see, what's effective, what's not effective. And as always, we push out the numbers, to school leaders for feedback. So they give their feedback on the numbers for their individual schools. We also review with other folks in central office and other departments, for their information. Enrollment choice and transfer is always immensely helpful. Our friends in operations, always tremendously helpful. Office of New Initiatives. So we go through this as a team, taking feedback from everyone as well. So it's not just the raw numerical projection that we use, for the process. So right now, where we are is, like I said, reviewing the projection results. We look at this by grade and demographic category. We do the data gathering and cleanup for the new projections, so the adjustments that we make to the 930 data this year, trying to project out for next year, and then making sure, of course, that we have an updated list of contacts for the internal review team and all the principals and everyone that participates in the enrollment projection process. And that is it. Are there any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you for going over that material and noting that during the presentation, we also were joined by Commissioner Ames Messenger. Welcome this morning. In terms of questions, fellow commissioners, do you have any questions you would like to lift up or comments?
None here.
No questions for me.
Hi, everyone. This is Yusuf. I want to introduce myself. I'm the new board executive for those who I haven't met yet. But just one quick question. I don't want to take up too much time. Have you built in or estimated how state aid might decline in the spring? Is there any variance built into your projections as we get closer to the end and the final counts on various funding formulas, special education, final enrollment counts, et cetera? Is there a variance built into our projections?
Yes. Not for the purpose of the projection. The projection, our goal is always to get as close to what we think the actual student count will be. But we do take the actual enrollment information to adjust our revenue projections based on what we think our revenue from the state will be. So we do an initial revenue projection usually in end of August, early September. We've updated that with the enrollment information that we got from September 30th and, which we have now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And it is wonderful to have our new board executive officer in role in the position. So welcome, and we're glad you're on the team. I do have a couple of comments or questions, Courtney, and certainly the first thing I just want to say is I remember back when I was a classroom teacher and hearing the number of times that there were fairly significant rebalancing in October and November that was affected number of staff. It was pretty significant and widespread. And just looking at what you presented and the number of steps, the thoughtfulness to minimize that disruptive is just like a testament to, a decade now of focused work on this. And really appreciate hearing and seeing the ways that the ability to project the numbers has improved, because I know directly from these different experiences how disruptive that can be if not managed well. And seeing that it's less than 1% district-wide. And did I hear you correctly? Because I don't think it was on one of the slides, but you said at most it was 5% for any given school, or was that the average?
It was the average. Yeah, there were some schools which had larger than, I think the biggest decrease was around 30%, and the biggest increase was like 40-something, 50%, but the average is 5.
So that then sort of helps inform the question that I wanted to ask was, I can imagine a number of reasons why those variances might have occurred. Obviously district wide, you all were really close, like that less than 1% is to be commended in all sorts of ways. But I'm curious if you all have reflections and insights on either the 1% district wide, or perhaps more importantly, the variations for individual schools because certainly, and I appreciate the transparency that you lifted up those numbers after all that you all were able to do to manage and mitigate some of that disruptiveness. But still noting that there are those schools that had, I can imagine it's those ones like you just highlighted, had the larger sort of difference between projected to actual. But do you all have reflections and insights yet, or is that something that might take a little bit longer to really help inform future projections?
We do. We're incorporating those already. There are a number of different things. I think for one, we over projected our multilingual students. Like we anticipate that there'd be, an impact, but I think we underestimated to what degree. So that's one. There's another factor that, we always have difficulty with, which is just, student choice. There's a lot of, choice within the district. So, well, as much as possible, we try to be informed of, like I said, the programmatic changes. So there were a couple of things that I think, we either got too late or didn't fully anticipate the magnitude of some of those changes. Like the schools with the biggest increases were our 2 AOP programs, which was a concerted effort to really increase staffing in those. We knew that was going to take place, but we didn't realize that, to what extent or how successful that would be, which we're very happy about. But yeah, so we incorporate those changes into what we're looking at for projecting for FY27 as well. Like what we think we can sustain or what do we think, might drop off.
So if I'm understanding correctly, what I'm hearing is the changes between schools, the larger change, largely has to do with the difficulties around the school choice and being able to project some of those differences. But the fact that the overall district numbers is a little bit more to do with demographics, and I can easily imagine this year, especially for multilingual learners, the broader set of uncertainties in the larger context, had a negative impact on school enrollment and some of those things. Am I accurate in sort of interpreting? And I appreciate that reflection that you all done.
Yep, no, that's exactly right. You got it.
Okay, well, I appreciate all that you all are doing to then manage that disruption. To what degree, are those schools that are on the sort of decreasing side of that likely to have, to be forced to have personnel changes? Obviously, staff is the largest item. Just want to have a sense for the degree of disruption to students in classrooms with changes in teachers and those structures.
Yeah, so we met with those 4 schools. We went through their entire budgets. We went through it with the school leaders and the ILEDs support teams as well. As much as possible, we tried to make adjustments that would not impact any administering of education, like any school class-based positions. So if possible, we look, of course, at OTPS first. We look, of course, at outside the class positions. I think there were a couple of instances where we did have to make changes that impacted classes. And, again, if that's where we have to get to balance, then, we'll go there, but it's not our first option.
Yeah, well, and certainly just underscoring that the blueprint for Maryland education does, require a certain percentage going to the schools solely based off of, the students that are enrolled there in that way. So obviously, it sounds like everything that you have done has helped to smooth that out as much as possible. But appreciate all of the details and the work in that, and for providing this report to us here. And as we've been talking about over the past couple of months, the budget and the budget process is certainly something that across the board, I know multiple commissioners are wanting to really make sure that they are understanding and they're hearing this thought. So if our board office, Yusuf Ahmed, if you could make sure, and team, that once this recording is published, that we share out this with a note to the full board to say that there was this report here around the budget process. I think all commissioners would benefit from hearing, Courtney, what you just went through and were able to help elucidate, and appreciate your hard work and the whole team's work on this.
Thank you. We
Coy, can I
appreciate it.
add something?
Oh, yeah. Commissioner
Quickly.
Haynes Messenger, if you have any other questions or comments are welcome too from other commissioners. So
Yeah.
please go.
And apologies, Courtney, if this is suddenly out of order. I was having some tech issues this morning, so I was jumping between devices. Just looking closely at those 4 schools, and just, I guess this is a mix of a comment and a question. Noting that those are schools that have either been impacted or will be impacted with annual review related changes in those communities. So for Charles Banniger with Southwest, and then Sandtown Winchester with New Song, and then looking at Ben Franklin and PACA, of just looking at how our immigration related changes and also potential changes with just school openings. So I think just looking at those as related concepts, if you could provide a little bit more information, Courtney, and follow up in terms of what those specific changes within schools are going to be. And then, because as a board member from our seat, of how are we connecting kind of just long-term patterns and making sure that surrounding schools in neighborhoods that are being impacted by annual review decisions for charter or traditional schools, to make sure that we are just creating stability in those schools that are remaining, realizing that they are schools that are being impacted by kind of related and parallel decisions. So I think just if we could have some more detail on what those are, as we think about that in the context of other decisions that we have made and are looking to evaluate and continuing to make over the next year or two.
Yeah, we can provide the board with the summary of what we did for the enrollment adjustment for those individual schools, and also, any of the enrollment information that we gather is shared with the folks who are making those decisions and the recommendations for the schools as well. So they have all that information and data as well too.
And do we have additional breakdown of where those enrollment changes are changing, and based on the projection of why? If there's rationale about why the projection is different, and at some point you're like, who knows why people do what they're going to do, but was it that we are expecting students to come over from Southwest to Charles Carroll Barrister and they didn't, and they went to a different school? Is it that they stayed at Southwest? And looking at just kind of if there's additional data on how we break down the movement, just realizing that this board particularly, and looking and going into transition of how do we build upon the really challenging work around the annual review process. So the more data that we have around the flow of students, I think could be helpful.
All right. Yep. I can look to see what we have for that. It'll vary from case to case. Some of the projections stay close to numerical projections. Some of them, we'll get feedback from the principal that says, this is kind of my field. Some of them we might, like I said, take other things into account. So we'll see what we have in the notes for each, and if there's anything relevant that we can share with the board too.
That would be super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those additional questions. Any other questions from other commissioners? Last comment question that I do have, Courtney, is remind me, with this adjustment, is there then an action that will come in front of the full board to like when and where, I guess, is that should the full board be prepared to vote on a recommendation?
Yeah, so what's going to be coming to you shortly is for the additional funding, additional revenue. So we need to recognize that revenue as part of the distribution to the school. So we're going to do a supplemental appropriation or a proposal to the board for that amount. So we'll make sure we flag it and provide any support information. But again, like I said, it's tied back to what we discussed in the spring when we approved the initial budget. We said that this was going to be happening. The funding's going to come in. So it shouldn't be a surprise. It's nothing, complex, but we do have to officially recognize our revenue so we can, move it to the schools. In terms of the enrollment adjustments, those get rolled into our quarterly budget amendments. So we do our quarterly budget amendments. There's not a separate approval process for those.
Okay, no, that's great to sort of know. And to your point, like, I think you all have done an excellent job in messaging around some of, like, these things are anticipated, they're planned. You're not sort of, to your earlier point, just changing things when there's so much uncertainty, trying to stabilize some of the Like we're not going to just change it suddenly last minute and try to, more likely to get it wrong if you do it that way than get it right and be predictable. So thank you for all of that work. With that, we can go on to the next item, which is a report on some of the licensure and updates. And I believe Ashley Turnier is presenting this with Chief Emily Nielsen. And if there's others, would welcome them as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen for a moment. There we are. Again, good morning. My name is Ashley Turnier. I am the Director of Staffing Initiatives and Licensure, and I will be giving a brief update on our licensure progress so far. Okay. Our work directly supports strategic priority 2 of the board, which is city schools will actively recruit, retain, and support qualified educators, administrators, and staff who are prepared to accelerate the personal growth and academic excellence of every student. Currently, we have over 7,000 staff who serve in MSTE licensed positions at city schools. The licensure team has been working for the past several years to significantly improve service to those staff while navigating and helping staff to navigate a variety of changes at the state level. This presentation will share the progress we have made and ongoing improvement efforts. So it's important for us to ground the conversation by talking through some of the past challenges. So past challenges we heard and have successfully addressed include that staff were having a hard time getting responses and needed information. They had to submit duplicate applications to receive or renew a license, and their approved licenses were in payment pending status for multiple months after being processed. We addressed those issues by adding members to the licensure team, updating and expanding the website, increasing live, which is virtual and in-person sessions to share information, and eliminating the duplicate application through data sharing with MSDE. As I said, we've made some licensure improvements, and in the past year, since our last board update, we have focused in 3 areas: improving the licensure review process at the front end during hiring, improving support to staff to understand and comply with their licensure requirements, and improving partnerships for staff to progress from conditional to professional licensure. First, regarding licensure improvements to the hiring process. In order to ensure we set ourselves up for licensure compliance, and at MSDE's recommendation, we now require an MSDE Teach profile to be created for a candidate for a certificated position to submit their employment application to city schools. Then, once a candidate has been offered and accepted a certificated position, they must submit their licensure application in Teach to clear pre-employment and begin to work. This means staff start in licensure compliance, and we no longer have to track them down to complete a requirement after they are hard at work with our students. To make the screening and processing happen within the rapid timelines of our selection and hiring processes, we nearly quadrupled the number of HC staff trained by MSDE to access Teach and check and update licensure statuses in the last year. Second, regarding licensure improvements, to help staff understand and comply with their licensure requirements, we have partnered with the BTU and held a variety of virtual and in-person support sessions throughout the year to review licensure requirements, status, and options with staff. We recognize challenges in meeting staff licensure needs and the importance of regaining trust. BTU has helped us engage teachers and position our licensure team as a trusted resource they can rely on. Teachers have provided valuable guidance on the licensure process and serve as thought partners to ensure we are meeting their needs. We've helped over 1,100 staff members get back into licensure compliance last school year. During the licensure support session this month, we supported an additional 125 educators and have future sessions scheduled across the year. Finally, regarding licensure improvements, to help staff progress from conditional to professional licensure, we have worked with our higher education partners. We made it easier and clearer for staff to participate in a cohort for their licensure program, thus increasing peer support and accountability. We streamlined direct billing with more partner organizations and more programs, decreasing the need for staff to pay upfront. And we improved data collection to understand which staff are on or off track for achieving professional licensure, so we can help where needed. Here you'll see there are several of our higher ed partners with whom we have charted programs to support staff in securing professional licensure or additional licensure endorsements. We are in partnership discussions with other colleges and universities to create new ways to meet educator need at efficient price points in order to be good stewards of district resources. So, for the current school year, we have 3 new goals. This slide outlines goals and how we will measure success on them. The goals are licensure compliance. We are working to ensure all licensed staff continuously hold valid current licensure. Licensure processing efficiency. We are working to process licenses quickly and accurately, decreasing the time from application submission to license being issued. And customer satisfaction. We are working to increase satisfaction with licensure team services and responsiveness among certificated staff. This concludes my brief presentation on our licensure work.
Thank you for that presentation. Questions from fellow commissioners?
I'll jump in. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. I think that this work definitely represents just a meaningful progress towards teacher sustainability. My questions really lie at, and I have 2, one being, what predictive analytic tools are we using, and if not, can we, to help us anticipate the risk around our licensures? The second question is just around district strategy to reduce the conditional or the dependency around conditional licenses, particularly if you can speak towards those in high need schools, as we have some of our schools that have more need for conditional licensures than others. And can you specifically speak in those schools around special education?
Okay, those are some heavy questions. What I'm going to do is chunk them. So I would like to address your last question first about the conditional licenses. And then I want to get back to you on some of the analytics that you're asking about, because I want to make sure I'm actually getting all the bits to your question. So as far as the conditional licenses, I think we are in a space where we're consistently going to have that challenge. And it's not just a challenge that we have in Baltimore, let alone Maryland. And so what I can tell you is that through our additional conversations, we're trying to find ways to better support our conditionally licensed staff to obtain licensure. And that includes having supports with test taking. That includes having supports where it's more cost effective. And that includes making sure that they're partnered with more seasoned educators. So those are things that are within our wheelhouse that we're trying to be cognizant of as we work toward identifying ways to better support staff. As far as high school, high needs areas and working with our talent management team, that is an area of focus, and making sure that we're getting more seasoned teachers in our area, in our schools that require a little bit more support. We are thinking through ways for us to better support those schools. But in truth, I would need to rely on our talent management team a little bit more to really figure out what the strategic plan is to tackle some of the things that you're asking about.
Ashley, can I add just one thing about the conditional licenses? So the reason why we can't decrease our dependence on them is that the alternative to conditional licensure is a staff coming in with a professional license. And right now, the higher education programs in Maryland are only producing about a quarter of the professionally licensed educators each year that Maryland LEAs need. So there is no way that we can just rely on what's coming out of higher ed to meet that need. And then the other case is poaching educators from other LEAs or other states. Maryland actually is in the process of launching a recruitment incentive for professionally licensed teachers to come from other states, which we're going to take advantage of for educators who are excited about moving here to Baltimore to take advantage of that, especially from nearby states or from anywhere in the country for that matter. But, you know, we do every year have some educators who come from other Maryland LEAs. We're never going to solve this problem, though, until we have more graduates coming out of the IHEs, which is why we're to Ashley's answer, really focusing on how we can help more of our educators within 3 years or less get from conditional license to professional license, since we're having to grow our own because we're not seeing enough being produced by higher ed.
And Emily, I'm actually really happy you brought that up because Commissioner Mohammed, something else that's important to note is that the colleges and universities are also saying the same. And so they're recognizing that we need to do something else. And they are really, really intentional in working with LEAs like city schools to figure out how they can best support us because they know that that support would also support them.
Hi, everybody. This
And
is Yusuf.
we may not be able to, we may not be able to provide this now, but if you can provide it in writing, if we can look at what is the landscape around conditional licensure look like with our special ed population. I'm really concerned about just where we are with our high need learning environments. So being able to understand what our challenges are so that we can start to work towards that strategy across the district, across our different departments is going to be helpful for us. I appreciate it. That's it for me.
I'm sorry. I'll get back
I
to
think
you.
I heard one other person coming off mute as well, if there was somebody else that came off mute.
Yeah, Commissioner Coy, that was me. Yusuf, hi, everybody. Hi, Ashley. Hi, everyone. Great presentation. I think you hit the nail on the head that everybody's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul across Maryland with filling these seats. Something that gets at the heart of what I think Commissioner Mohammed was trying to address is with 1/5 of our licenses being conditional, in order to further contextualize it for the board, if you could work with me to provide for the board office a breakdown of that 20%, how many are on the non-renewable 3-year for special education, how many people are on the 5-year, had they already been renewed once, breaking that down further to in the past. And this isn't something that we expect, immediately, but, a longer look back as to how many people have been on their conditional license and exited Baltimore City altogether, how many of them were able to use the tool provided to them by your office to get onto a more permanent license. I think something like that would help us contextualize and help the board strategize. So I can work with you on that request and then sort of drilling down at the heart of the issue.
Sure, I would like that.
Other
Apologies, Coy.
questions or?
Oh, I would say, for some reason, my hand is, I'm stuck on a phone because it won't let me hold my computer. Apologies. Final kind of follow-up question related to the partner institutions, and from the board standpoint, just deep gratitude. And I know HC and also the equity team and a number of folks have been working really hard to think about how are we looking at pipelines, both for folks new to staff, how do we work with partner institutions to build capacity of our folks as they move into higher certification levels. I think just is there's a way to capture, and if you have this data from this last cycle and are able to hand that over to Yusuf, around kind of the feedback from those higher level institutions of like, what are they seeing as the barriers for this working? And I know just anecdotally from talking to people on the university side, as well as teachers, like looking at how are we getting our, direct enrollment when we're doing pay, when we're doing reimbursables, like those structural things that oftentimes prevent people from being able to make, or making university partners want to pull their hair out. So just if there's any sort of feedback and survey data from the partner side about what are the things that make working with city schools the best and easiest and 100% better than our surrounding counties, and what are the things that we really can be focused on in terms of how we position policy and operational practices to make us better partners with these institutions. So looking at that feedback, whether that comes from city school staff that are currently enrolled or from the partner side. And then the second question is getting a little bit at the communications part. And I know, Yusuf, you had touched just briefly on terms of how is that being communicated in the patterns you're seeing with staff. I think also looking at realizing when families are being notified that teachers are not within their certification. I know that we've had a couple of snafus in recent history, and just looking at the process and procedure for when notifications go out beyond city schools to families and staff, or to families and students, when there is a certification violation. So I would like to have, if there's just kind of a flow chart of what that communication tree looks like, both to what goes to MSDE, what goes to school partners or to teachers, and what goes to parents and kids, most importantly, and community members, realizing the anxiety level there is very, very, very high.
And Commissioner Messenger, those were items for follow-up, not necessarily answering right here.
Yes. If there's like broad things that are helpful to speak to in this moment, absolutely. I think those are, like, it's always good to have a conversation, but I realize those are a number of very specific asks that you might not have at this moment, and in the future is fine. So I'll leave that to your preference.
I gotcha. So I do appreciate having the flexibility. So I can definitely get you some more granular information at a later time, but to just touch on it, as far as what the partners are saying, they are loving the direct billing option. It allows for them to get the money right up front. What I can also share is that we've been seeing the grades coming in for students who are participating in direct billing, which really allows for us to see that they're retaining the information and it's just a real benefit there. So when we started talking to them and figuring out like, how can we best support, what do we need to improve upon? And the one thing that we did land on was it is a true benefit, both cost-wise for city schools, but also a benefit in just making sure that we have things in order with the partner. So that's part of the reason why you're going to see an uptick in some of our partners for direct billing. As far as the NHQ, I believe you're referring to the notices that go out to families. And yeah, so a part of that has also been a piece of the ongoing cleanup that you've been seeing. So last year, we sent out notices and there were concerns around, hey, are you sure that this is a thing? And so what we did was we wanted to make sure that we were getting really clear on what that would mean for families and how they're impacted by this. And a part of that clarity really involved us being specific and saying, hey, these teachers actually are professionally licensed. However, they may be teaching a class that is outside of their grade band. And so making sure that they understood that component. And that was just really important for us to do. But yes, we can get you some information to hit on the points that you're asking about.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
And thank you globally for your work. This is laden in lots of details and nuance. So thank you for slogging through it and
have a high attention
to detail.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from other commissioners? I do have one or two as well, but I guess Commissioner Simmons or Commissioner Mohammed, if there's anything else you wanted to add, but Commissioner Simmons, if there's anything, feel free.
Go right ahead.
So certainly, and this touches on where Commissioner Messenger was ending there. There are so many parts of this. Obviously, teachers and staff make up such a super majority of our budget. That is where the most sort of emphasis, teachers rightly, and all staff that are licensure rightly are very attuned to this, given the implications this has on their pay, on their professional sort of position. All of these things are wrapped up in, and I'm reminded of the opening lines of Anna Karenina, where, to paraphrase broadly, there's many ways to get this wrong. And there's like one way to get it right. So you are constantly having to consider all the things that could go wrong at any stage of this process. And I do think from the questions that you've heard here, and also from more broad knowing sort of some of the thoughts and insights from other commissioners, this is an area that I do see and know and feel like needs an increase of attention. And the things that you reflected on in the presentation certainly spoke to that, spoke to the ways that you all have been working on this. And I was really glad to see the reference specifically to working with BTU. Obviously, they do have an aligned set of interests here in terms of making sure that all of these are done right, and they are a good accountability partner to make sure that we are fulfilling on all of the obligations, and we owe it to our teachers to get these things right. And to correct them when we get them wrong. And also I do, I really appreciate the overview of the different education partners, because I know there has been some, sort of in the not too distant past, but certainly a couple of years now, where the process of getting academic units and different things has not been as either thoughtful or as robust as it should be. And so appreciate all of the work underneath the hood to get those things in a better shape, better place. So my broad comment here is more to say that I do think this is an area that needs sustained commitments and ongoing, and especially as we consider transition. One of the things that I would like to see for the benefit of the board is the way in which a longer view of what are things that are going to take longer to continue to implement, and that we should be committed to carrying forward from all of the past decade of lessons learned, really making sure that we are taking this moment to reflect on, celebrate the things that have been improved, note the things that still need attention and a body of work, and to be well positioned to address those, and utilize a variety of tools, whether, as Commissioner Mohammed referenced, there are some technology tools that might be helpful in this process. The administrative nature could lend itself to some of the generative abilities of agentic or otherwise AI, perhaps, but that should be considered thoughtfully and mapped out, to reduce the administrative burden on everybody, and to always have a human verifying, reviewing, but to make it so that one person has a greater productivity, perhaps, or to say are there administrative steps that aren't beneficial, that should be that we don't know why we did it that way at some point, and we should simplify the process, and which ones are the steps that are not subject to sort of different approaches, right, that are required for various reasons. So all of this to say, the volume of the work that you are representing here, and that is obviously not just you, but is the team, is tremendous. We see that as the board, and we know that getting this right makes such a huge difference for everybody in the district, from students and the teachers that they have, to the teachers' experience, to the teachers' pay, et cetera. So thank you for that work. And there's not a specific follow-up action item aside from mapping out this transition as part of a broader transition plan. And I can imagine as Chief Perkins-Cohen and others are sort of outlining when and where certain things in that are being done and coming to the board, this being one of those. And it's been talked about recently as well. We've talked about some of this, but continuing to maintain a focus on this, it would be appreciated.
I understand. I appreciate that.
Coy,
with
I'm
that,
sorry.
oh, no, go for it.
Coy, one thing. I think just one thing adding, Chief Nielsen, specifically looking to the large university institutional partners, realizing that we are asking many things of them, and so and that they're also asking things of us. So we have students, you also have researchers, you also have volunteers. Those are complex relationships. So I think thinking about them again as we look at transition, but also just as the board is looking at strategic planning, to be kind of thinking, and even honestly going into legislative session as we're making joint asks for budgetary purposes, of just thinking about them also as a unit, as there's a way to kind of script, these are the things when we're looking at Towson University, these are kind of the asks that are coming from this as an institution as a whole. These are the things that we are able to offer. These are kind of in the next 3, 5, 10 years, what we're looking to prioritize as we build out those relationships. Just realizing, being in Baltimore, one of our greatest strengths is that we have phenomenal institutions, phenomenal HBCUs, phenomenal state, private, a wide variety of institutions, and how are we partnering well with them based on their area of expertise. So realizing that's probably a larger conversation with cabinet the board. But I think just that this is one of those key asks that we're asking to come away with from universities. But how are we, and even looking at kind of community schools work, as a lot of that work is centering in Towson, just like how are we being strategic in our long-term relationships with these partners? And are we, because we are going through transition, like how are we mapping out the individuals at these places as a system for where we're making those asks?
Thank you. Okay, clear on the feedback and any, I guess, any things that we can provide clarity, or do you feel like you have a long list, longer list than maybe you were expecting coming into the presentation? But you should expect a long list on these things.
It's okay. I'm gonna review my notes. I tried taking copious notes, but I'll probably reach out to Yusuf just to make sure what I captured aligns to what you are looking for.
Wonderful. Thank you again for all this work and for the team's effort on this.
Thank you.
For the next set of items, and this might be exactly how you all are anticipating, but I just want to make sure or to align, and maybe actually first I go there. Tanisha, do we have public comments signed up for today? Just to give me a sense for like time that we need to hold.
Timing. Yeah, right now we do not have anyone signed up. I will let you know if anybody does.
Okay, thank you so much. So for this is sort of, I see this next set of items as a collection of items, and I guess my question for those presenting, for the team presenting, is if you are able to sort of speak broadly and then I guess not repeat sort of the introduction for each individual item, but then speak to the specifics of the different items, seeing them more as a collection than as separate items. Is that how you all were thinking about presenting them?
Yes, that is correct. This is Marianne Cox, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer for City Schools, and we did intend to present this as a group of 5 supplemental appropriations. So I can just give a few comments, and then Cindy Smith from the Operations Department is going to look at the documentation that I'll put on screen. I'll share my screen, and she has the support documentation that she will discuss and answer any questions.
Perfect. Yep, no,
okay.
that's what I was asking for. You've got it.
Okay, well, thank you. I bring greetings from CFO Chris Doherty to the committee chair, the committee commissioners, city school staff, and our community partners. We certainly understand that there's a lot of interest in the supplemental appropriations because our facilities and the state of our facilities is a matter of great interest to our entire community. So I am going to share my screen. Okay. And there are 5 supplemental appropriations that we will be discussing today. The total amount for all 5 supplemental appropriations is $15.6 million, of which $11.4 million relates to the first supplemental appropriation, which is the Locks and Doors projects. I wanted to offer information on the source and use of these funds. Please remember that supplemental appropriations are essentially an accounting exercise where we transfer funds, fund balance from the general fund to the capital projects fund, which allows the capital projects funds to use this appropriation for their various projects. So the money is held or reserved in the general fund assigned fund balance for these specific and individual projects. The CEO approves the placement of these projects in our assigned fund balance as the board designee. She has this authority per board policy DIG fund balance, and these amounts and projects can be found in our audited financial statements, which are on the board site for FY 2025. So we through the board designee, the CEO, with the board's authority, places these items in the assigned fund balance. And then when we want to use these funds, we also go back to the board again to request the specific expenditure appropriation for these supplemental funds. So you can see here that this is an agenda item that will be on the board, public board meeting on 12/2. And we have identified 3 priorities for the supplemental appropriations, which is priority 3, 5, and 7. Priority 3 relates to city schools will have high quality modernized facilities and resources that support the success of students, educators, administrators, and staff. Priority 5 is city schools will provide equal access to district services, resources, and facilities to ensure the success of students, staff, and the surrounding community. And priority 7 is city schools will continuously work towards equity at all levels by implementing policies, practices, and procedures that create a welcoming and inclusive academic and professional environment. So the first supplemental appropriation is the request for board approval for supplemental for capital projects fund in the amount of $11.4 million relating to the locks and doors projects. So the supporting documentation will be discussed by Cindy Smith at the from the operations office. So Cindy, could you offer some comments here, please?
Yes, Marianne, can you actually share the backup?
Oh, okay, I'm
I was gonna
sorry.
say, if you weren't sure,
thought I
if you were
was
intending to
sharing.
share your screen, it was not being displayed, but
Okay,
happy for that to be shown for folks.
okay, here. Okay, can you see it now?
No. Nope.
Not yet, no.
Okay, let me try again. Share. I want to share. Okay. Okay, wrong one.
Hi, Marianne.
I want to share.
happy
Yeah, I
to
want to share my
assist.
screen.
Okay. Which document would you like to share?
I am looking for the supporting documentation for supplemental appropriation number 1, interiors, locks, and doors hardware for the high schools.
Okay. I don't mind assisting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Tisha.
It's the one that totals $11,431,250.
Yep, this is it here. It'll just take a second to pull it up, I imagine, but there you go. We can see it now.
Okay. So as I believe Dr. S actually brought this up at the last board meeting in one of her comments about how we were going to be able to proceed with the first phase for the high schools. So this is the funding for that for the high schools, and the schools list is here of the 18 schools we will be able to proceed with for the total of just over $11 million. We're super excited to be able to actually proceed with these locks and the door hardware in the high schools, and we are actually, as long as this is approved and everything, looking forward to be able to bid this in January.
Wonderful. We'll take questions at the end of all of the set of them.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, that's the first one. Can you see the screen now for the reach floor
Yes.
repairs and the amount of $260,000?
Yes.
Okay, Cindy?
Okay. Yep. So Reach was a 21st century school, or is a 21st century school, that has unfortunately still continued to have some issues with the floors after completion. Many years after completion, this building has been occupied for several years now. It was a STEAM building that we converted during that renovation, but the steam apparently really wreaked some havoc on the wood framing of the building that is just now being discovered after some years of not having the steam in the building. That wood is really starting to show the warping. So we really need to replace the floor. This is particular to the cafeteria.
Okay, thank you. The next supplemental appropriation request relates to the City Springs Elementary Middle School Construction Augmentation Fund in the
So-
amount of $2 million. Yes.
Okay, so this project is a project that we're doing in conjunction with the city and the Perkins Somerset Old Town home redevelopment. So it's all a part of that project. The city is funding the majority of it. However, as part of that fund swap and getting the funding from them, we're finding that we don't quite have enough to make the school be the building that it needs to be. So this is part of that funding to help close that gap.
Okay, and the next supplemental appropriation request relates to the Edmondson CTE Project Construction Augmentation Fund and the amount of $1.2 million.
So this is actually a supplemental appropriation that was approved, I believe, last year. The $18 million was approved as part of that to be able to move the CT programs from the Skill Center into the Edmondson building to help consolidate that, help the utilization of the Edmondson building, and really bring the CTE programs up to current day standards as well, in alignment with the CTE programming and the programs that they want to continue at Edmondson versus, continue at other schools. As part of that, however, one of the biggest programs that is going to continue at the Skill Center or at the Edmondson building from the Skill Center is the automotive program, and it actually is bringing in painting and some other elements to the automotive program that have not existed at the Skill Center, to the point where we're going to have to actually do a minor addition on the outside of Edmondson, really to bring those cars in. We have to be able to accommodate those lifts, and to be able to accommodate the lifts, we need to make a small addition on the outside of Edmondson to do that. This is still ultimately a much better situation than having them in the Skill Center and crossing the street and everything else. But we're looking for just a little bit of supplemental funding for it to be able to do that addition that we really need to make that project whole.
Okay, thank you. And the last supplemental appropriation request relates to the Lakeland FF&E request for $650,000.
Yep. And so for this project, this is actually a prefab replacement building that we're looking in the CIP this year to put forward. Lakeland is very overcrowded, and the portable that they have there now is not sufficient for the number of students that they have. Lakeland is having to use a lot of ancillary spaces, little alcoves, things like that for all of their students. So what we're looking to do is to replace the portable that they have that is well beyond its useful life as well, with a new prefab similar to what we put at Mount Washington and Marigi Ferry. That prefab would be a 2-story prefab. In the CIP request, with the way the prefabs work, that does not cover FF&E or furniture or technology. So this would support that prefab building and to be able to get the new furniture in there for the students.
Marianne, you're still sharing your screen if you want to exit sharing
Yes,
screen.
I'm trying to, yes, thank you. There, it went for a minute. Okay.
There we go.
There we go. Yes,
So that's the collection of items to present. And any other comments before we open up for questions from commissioners? Okay, commissioners, questions on any one of those items that have been presented?
This isn't really a question, but more of a comment of appreciation. I remember we had some conversation around some of these particular schools, and I remember Cindy was kind of offering some things about what was happening at Emerson. So I'm glad that this is taking place and that we're getting the extra dollars or the request for the dollars so that the work can get done. I do have a question, maybe not a question again. I'm just hoping that with REACH, that maybe the dollars can, or maybe that, another request may even come to go from just the, I think you said the CAF or the gym, or was it the cafeteria in particular, but also the stairways. I'm just thinking about that, or were the stairwells included?
They are not included, and I will follow up with maintenance to see what is going on with those. If the stairwells aren't wood, so it wouldn't be the same kind of situation, but I can find out what's going on to see what might be happening.
I do remember there was some warping that was shared with me, and then I actually tripped over myself in the stairwell. Then
Okay.
I was told when I tripped, I was told that Dr. S tripped as well. So I just want to make sure that.
So it sounds like the stair treads might be delaminating, and I can investigate
Yeah,
that.
it's kind of, and I'm glad you add that piece about this. I couldn't understand, but now I do understand more, thinking about what the building was prior to. I wasn't thinking about that, but I get it now. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, one additional piece, just while Commissioner Simmons had brought up the Edmondson, I noticed that it had an estimate and then a funded to date, and that wasn't a table that was showing that wasn't like a math equation there, but the requested amount was not the delta between the estimate and the funded amount. I was just curious if you could speak a little bit to some of that.
The money isn't available in this year's supplemental and fund balance with what was left to be able to fund that full amount. So we would probably be looking for an additional supplemental appropriation in a future year, next year, most likely.
Okay, that makes sense. And obviously you all are masterful at stretching every dollar when it comes to facilities. And I do feel to sort of state the obligatory, like, we are underfunded in this category for decades, because like the things that you all are able to manage to do are far less than what is needed to be done. And that's why we do need ongoing and additional and greater support in these categories from sources of funding. So, but thank you for that. Any other questions or comments from other commissioners?
Ames Messenger, sorry. Along the same lines, just thank you very much for the commitment of the district as a whole to making sure that the doors and locks are secured. When you look at best practices nationally, when you look at what teachers and staff are saying, also just from personal experience of having to go into lockdown with students and not having a door to be able to do it, that is a very scary, vulnerable place to be. So thank you for committing to do the right thing. I know that has been a challenging financial with federal things. So, but thank you for making the commitment. And I'm excited that construction and bidding will be happening soon.
Yeah, it certainly has been an item that has come in front of the board over the past number of years for some time, as you all know, but grateful. It's a long tail follow-up, but that is capital improvement projects generally, is they are not short, fast, or quick.
Correct. Yes.
I actually have one more
Please, go for it.
question. And thank you, Commissioner Ames Messenger, for bringing it up, because I almost forgot it. The Doors Unlocked project, I think maybe I just want to know what the correspondence is with city council and city schools around the Doors Unlocked project. This really came up last week at the Board of Estimates. And I just want to make sure that that folks know that we're doing the work to make sure it happens. So I'm not quite sure if you all
we can
saw
send that
or knew
communication.
but
Yeah, I did not. We can make sure that we share that communication with them, that we are. I do know that there was a question at the time that I received from Dr. S actually about the rest of how many there were after this. Like, this is just the high schools. I just want to make sure that everybody is, super clear on that. This is just the high
Yes.
schools. There are all of the elementaries and pre-K to 8s and the few standalone middles too to go after this. So this is just the first trench of all of them.
Yeah,
Mr.
no,
Chair,
that-
this is
Mhm.
Mr. Chair, this is Dewana. I was going to tell Commissioner Simmons that we had a meeting with the mayor's office last week, and the locks and doors came up, and we were preparing to give him information, which we will also share with City Council about the status and plans for the locks and doors.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Dewana, for that additional and appreciate everyone's work on this. Any other questions on any of the items, the supplemental items that have come to us here, and that will be going on to the full board? Okay, well then we anticipate seeing these at our next upcoming board meeting where these
That's
will be
correct.
on.
Yes.
Thank you
that's correct.
for the
Thank you.
presentation and for doing them as a collection. We have one more item on the agenda before we go to procurement, which is around the compliance report review. There typically is not a presentation relating to this, but I guess I'm wondering if you all are planning on sharing anything about it or would prefer just questions from commissioners.
Hi, this is Joanna P. Sunier, the Sustainability Manager, and I do have a short presentation if the committee would be willing to hear it.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
One sort of thing that I'll just add is thank you to everybody on the presentations. I have noticed how much you all have worked to be as short on the presentations and to give as much time for questions. I know that is not a natural, like, presentations grow in size when there's so many things to share about all the work that you all are doing, and it's an effort to say, fewer things. I think the old adage is I would have written a shorter letter if I had more time. That was shared. It's like I'd write a shorter email if I had more time to consolidate it down. But thank you for spending the time to be short. So please go ahead.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So put this, unfortunately, when I'm putting it into presentation mode, it's going on my other screen, which is not sharing. So I apologize. I'm going to have the sidebar showing throughout this. So as I said, I'm Joanna P. Sunier. I'm the Sustainability Manager for City Schools Based in Operations, and I'm sharing the compliance report for policy ADG. The environmental sustainability policy aligns to all of the board's strategic priorities. We are talking really about our sustainability plan, which is a staff level document that supports the sustainability policy. It's a requirement of that policy. It was issued in 2023 and was developed in partnership with chiefs and their teams, as well as with external partners, and has multiple goals and metrics in these 7 categories. The work of sustainability and sort of the theme of this presentation today is really about how environmental sustainability supports multiple goals throughout the district. So in this slide, I wanted to draw your attention to how this work supports the competencies from the Portrait of a Graduate that City Schools adopted last year. And so multiple examples we can identify of ways that our students are building these competencies through this work. We also know that research about environmental education shows that it really benefits kids. So as shown in the image, the iceberg may only be showing the environmental education, sort of the traditional piece of learning about the environment, but that we know that that really helps support lots of other goals and ideas and things that we want our kids to learn. So Stanford recently did a study about multiple peer-reviewed studies over the last 20 years, really showing that this helps with those core competencies and the critical thinking and other items that we're really looking for our kids to have and be prepared for the 21st century. Our sustainability work supports city schools in 5 key areas. So in our green building and energy, our waste reduction, our recognition and partnership, the environmental education, of course, and then in our sustainable transportation. So you'll see this work throughout the offices and departments and chiefs throughout the district. Examples of this throughout, the first being when we embed sustainability in our career technology education pathways. That really helps prepare our kids for those college and careers in the green and the blue economy, the ocean being the blue economy, as well as multiple other pathways. We know that it can also support our social emotional learning goals. It can support our extracurricular goals, right? The green teams, the environment clubs can often be reasons why kids enjoy coming to school. We also know that from our operations, right, tightening up our occupancy schedules for our heating and cooling systems can increase our occupant comfort and help us save money. And then we are fortunate to be in a state here in Maryland that has continued to prioritize environmental sustainability. And so there are opportunities for us to gain resources within our state and really follow best practices. We are really interested in preparing our kids for jobs in the circular economy. So this is a term that is growing in popularity, and the theory is that we need to recirculate our products and materials, eliminate waste, and really regenerate our natural world. And so careers, some of them listed on the left, can be things that we can prepare our kids for. The 2 images on the right are the one on the left is a national example. The one on the right is Maryland-based for what careers are out there for our kids to join and be prepared for. So we are trying to link our students to living wage jobs and careers in those fields. And we really think we can improve and increase the work-based learning opportunities for our kids, help them get those IRCs, the industry-related credentials. There are a number of pathways that are growing. How can we prepare our kids for those? And then even if a student is not going into a quote unquote green field, there are multiple ways that this work can be identified into that pathway so that they can be thinking about this and really have an edge and advantage in that career because they are thinking about ways that the green economy can be fitting into that work. And in the small print are some of the examples of where we are doing that either already or plan to be increasing that. As I mentioned, Maryland still really has prioritized this work, and that means we have a number of compliance items that we need to be meeting. So we have building energy performance standards for our existing buildings. We have high performance building standards for our new buildings. We have requirements that our students graduate environmentally literate. And the blueprint has a very aggressive goal about student apprenticeships. So we are looking for resources and partners to help us meet these requirements that we must do. Some of the resources that are available for us or our partners are the Maryland Energy Administration has funding, Maryland Department of the Environment has programming. There is some funds from the state budget for higher education that we might be able to partner on. And there does still exist some national funds, much reduced from what it's been in the past, but there still are opportunities there. Some of the examples of what we have already secured funds for in the past as examples, it really spans from the federal level, so the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the state level, the Maryland Energy Administration, the nonprofit sector, the Chesapeake Bay Trust, to the national nonprofit sector, National Park Foundation, and then the local philanthropic community. So Lockhart Vaughan Foundation and Clayton Baker Trust have funded some of our work. So we have a strong track record of raising some of these funds and believe that while diminished in some places, that there really are still funds and resources available for us. So I'd like to speak very briefly about several sort of spotlights and examples of what this work looks like in our schools. So the first one is about Moravia Park. where the student council and the green team have teamed up and are really helping our kids. While maybe it looks like, okay, they're collecting recycling or collecting trash, it's really part of a broader effort. It's about planning. It's about presenting to their peers and others within the school and learning those important leadership skills at their school within their daily school day. The next one is a spotlight about a 6th grade science project. This is What Lives in the Harbor. This is an example of where students are making and testing real world hypotheses. They are getting that support from local college students. The program was developed by the National Aquarium and the City School Science Office. It's aligned to our curriculum. And students do research ahead of time at school. They go to the aquarium, they're out on the pier, they test water quality, they pull up cages with oysters and identify what other animals are there. And they're doing that all with young people from local colleges. So there's an internship and classes with Morgan State, Towson, and University of Baltimore. And that is a great way of both making it so it's very hands-on at the aquarium itself in very small groups and helping bring young people potentially into the field. And there is a link there to a video that the aquarium developed about one of those interns. The next one is about the apprenticeship program that the operations team operates. And we have apprentices now in HVAC, grounds, and repair shop, and we are making an intentional effort to include environmental sustainability in that work. And so we're going to be integrating that in a number of ways. And I just need to adjust my slide a moment to make sure you see that we have hired 14 apprentices into full-time jobs at city schools in the 3 years that we have operated this program. The next spotlight is about our food nutrition services team, the Farm to School program. They run a number of day-long summits in addition to the traditional field trips that you may be familiar with. And so kids are coming to the farm, learning lots of things. One of them in particular, the African American Foodways Summit, is developed and organized by high school students. So again, they might not only be learning about the topic at hand, but also those logistics, working with external partners, locally relevant organizations and business people who are participating in that program. And the farm team, I also want to call your attention to, had reached 14,000 of our students last year. The last spotlight is our a program through our college and career readiness team. And this is a offshore wind workforce program helping to prepare students for the green economy. So we actually have a short 2-minute video about this that I'd like to show. And then I have one final slide after that.
There's no audio coming through. If there's audio.
Thank you. Can anyone offer me advice about what I need to do to get the audio to be shared? Or Sarita, if you're on the call and could show the audio, that could work also.
I think it's in your team settings that you can control the audio for the embedded link.
Hi, Joanna. If you could reshare your screen, and then when you're right before you actually hit share, just make sure that the include audio option is selected, and that should be in the top right corner.
Okay. So, advanced noise suppression. I'm on audio settings. Let me share.
Pull the screen sharing real quick. There we go. Okay. And then when you hit the share button again, in the top right, there should be a little icon that says include audio.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Is that working?
The audio is coming through, but I don't.
Baltimore City Schools
There we
is
go. Yep,
preparing
it's
its
working.
students to thrive in a green economy. Baltimore Trains for Wins is an innovative program that for the last 3 years has exposed students to careers in sustainable energy. By targeting wind-related C2E pathways, the program has raised the visibility of this growing industry. This has included wind turbine competitions, certifications in welding and OSHA 30, and summer programming that trains students in other wind-related trades.
What was fun for me about welding was the different tools that we use to do it and different components.
A total of 187 industry-recognized credentials have been earned by students and teachers. Baltimore City has all the potential to be the center of the growing sustainable energy industry. Baltimore Trains for Wind invests in young people so they not only have access to these careers, but are poised to be the leaders of the future. Over the past 3 years, the Baltimore Trains for Wind program, funded through the Maryland Energy Administration, has invested over $500,000 to prepare young people for careers in sustainable energy.
I could see myself engineering through like the wind field, especially since it's something that it's like high demand, like you guys said, and there's a need for them. So yeah, I could definitely see myself working in the wind industry.
I think it's important to at least learn about these. And that's, I think, what KidFilm does for us, is it teaches us and it helps us develop skills related to it.
So thank you to Mr. Amin's class at Digital Harbor High School who made that video. And we do have some students here available from Mervo, actually, who are available to answer any questions if the team has any. I just have one final slide, which is about updating the plan. We do need to update our sustainability plan per the policy. And so we will be doing that this year. And we're really going to be focusing on improving our alignment about the compliance and partnerships and the resources that I spoke about in the presentation. So please stay tuned, both people on the call and in the public, for ways to lend your voice to update that plan going forward. So thank you very much for your time, and we are available for any questions that people may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation and the video. Questions from my fellow commissioners? And I know, oh yeah, Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for the presentation. Really excited about this as you presented sustainability is not a side initiative for our students, but a pathway for economic mobility. And it's always great to see the growth within CTE with city schools. Where my concern lies, I think my first question is just around how the district will ensure equitable access to sustainability programs. I really want to see this as something that is an opportunity for the district and not one that really widens the gap between schools that have strong partnerships and schools that don't. So if you can speak towards that, that would be helpful, and it would be great if that can be, when this is presented to the board, if that could be really clear.
So for first, let me say that I actually do not believe that I present to the full board. So unless I'm mistaken, I think this is where it goes. I think that's an extremely important question and is something that we are always thinking about in this work. And from everything from which school has partnerships to which school, when we push out opportunities, has the capacity to raise their hand to say, oh yes, I'll take advantage of this. And so the more that we can really be doing from the district office, so for example, that program in the 6th grade with the aquarium, like that comes out from a central office programming and therefore is really available to everyone. And we're trying to make sure that everyone can take advantage of that regardless of where you go to school. Similarly, with some of the extracurricular programming, like it should not be based on a individual principal or teacher who thinks this is important, and rather be something that you get an equitable experience wherever you may be. So it is challenging because there are limited resources. So something like our 9th grade watershed experience requires, for the full robust experience, a bus to another location, having a partner support that, and having those funds year after year to support transportation and that supporting work for all 9th grade students year after year after year is very challenging. So I don't have a perfect answer for it other than we are always thinking about that and trying to be as equitable as possible. And I welcome suggestions and ideas and additional partnerships to make the program as robust as it can be for all of our students.
I appreciate that insight. I think it leads into my second question, which just is around what funding sources will be braided to avoid the use of general funds, or at least so that we aren't dependent on general funds during, I think it's really important, especially as we're planning for the 2026 rewrite.
So I think we are really keep our ears and eyes open and scour opportunities for bringing in external funds for this work. And so we are fortunate, as I said, that Maryland still does have some resources. Now that certainly could change given the statewide budget crises that we're in. We're also really trying to find ways that this does not always cost more. So while an example like the 9th grade trip, like that is certainly above and beyond what is already budgeted, other things such as improving our occupancy schedules or our HVAC may be something that's a change in how we do our day-to-day business and may not always increase our costs and may actually save money. So trying to sort of marry those things that might need external support to make us happen while also thinking about our own internal systems and ways of thinking and may be able to integrate things in without a huge additional cost.
Thank you for the insight.
Wonderful. Thank you for those questions, Commissioner Mohammed. Any other questions, Commissioner Simmons?
I did, but I think that we've had some conversation, I think, around this prior. And I just wanted to, I guess, kind of go back to the relationship, particularly around the sustainability work with DPW and the opportunity that is there. And just thinking about just listening to the exchange just now with my colleague, I know that there are opportunities for individual schools to maybe tap into some of those resources when you're thinking about buses and like those small, not so small oftentimes because buses are pretty expensive now, but those small opportunities for an individual school to apply for the dollars that DPW has, particularly around that the Eco Warriors program that they have. So maybe I'm just adding 2 cents, but I think that might be a place to kind of tap into.
Yes, I appreciate that. So Department of Public Works at the city does collect recycling from our schools that participate in the program at no cost to us. You mentioned the Eco Warriors program. That's a competition that many of our schools participate in, and schools get badges for doing eco-friendly things and they get prize money. And so we have participated in that as well.
But they also just recently had a meeting with Ms. Wells. There are, I think, some untapped opportunities that if I don't know, I can bridge so that you guys can have more
I will be
conversation.
happy to reach out to her because I do work with her. So I'll reach out to her and mention your comment and see if there's something that we have left on the table.
Please.
Thank you.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Commissioner Foy?
Yes, please.
This is Monique Rumo, the Executive Director of Operations. I just wanted to chime in quickly on one of the questions concerning just other funding opportunities outside of general funds. So, for instance, one of the things I just wanted to bring up is just looking towards the philanthropic community. We have an opportunity where our apprentice program is receiving funding, and so we are looking for other opportunities even outside so that we can support and pull sustainability into things like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this work is so important, and for all the reasons that were highlighted, and the way that it applies knowledge to real world problem solving, is to be commended. I've often shared, or I've shared in other places, but I think I've shared once or twice over the years in this role, an analogy that sometimes school to me can feel like the equivalent of eating bread. By eating a cup of flour, having a drink of water, a teaspoon of salt, and of yeast, which are like all the ingredients of bread, but is the most disgusting way to eat it. And it's really in the mixing of knowledge, and I would say the application of that knowledge, that it becomes bread, right? That it becomes sort of this makes sense. And I saw in the video from the students and in the other sort of ways that you presented that you are really working on the application of all of this multidisciplinary learning that just makes it so relevant and so needed. So thank you for the work on this, and certainly echo my fellow commissioners' comments around how can we sustain this important work is a top of mind question given the broader sort of macro environment that we all operate within. So with that, thank you for this presentation, and thank you for those that have joined as part of it. Moving to we do have one written update. If there are any items cognizant of time from fellow commissioners on the written item, I would ask you to share those over with our board office to then relay those to the relevant individuals. But let's proceed to the procurement items. It is not as extensive, perhaps, of a procurement agenda, but I do want to give a chance to go through those items with our last remaining few minutes.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Catherine Kamenecki, and I am the contracts administrator for City Schools. And I will be giving the procurement agenda. And these are items that will be on the December 2nd agenda. The first item is item 16.1. The Chief Human Capital Officer requests the board's approval of a contract with the Community Training and Assistance Center, or CTAC, to provide technical support and expertise to increase City Schools' capacity to improve employee evaluation tools and resources. The estimated total contract amount is $209,300. And the contract term is December 3rd, 2025 through June 30th, 2028.
Any questions on this from fellow commissioners?
None here.
Next. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Section 18.1. The Chief Legal Officer requests the board's approval to increase the contract amount with outside counsel Jackson Lewis for personnel and related legal matters. This is an increase of $60,000 for a total contract amount of $160,000. And the contract term is April 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026.
And please read the next one as well, then I'll ask if there's questions on either of these.
And then section 18.2, the Chief Legal Officer requests the board's approval to increase and extend the contract term with outside counsel Karpinski, Cornbrooks, and Karp. And this is for additional personnel and related legal matters. This is a contract increase of $75,000 for a total contract amount of $175,000. And the contract extension will go through June 30th, 2026.
Any questions on either of these legal requests from the legal office from my fellow commissioners?
Not a question, however, a statement. I think that these are definitely needed, and I'm in support. However, my concern lies that I see these increases with regards to legal as they are needed, yet I don't necessarily see an internal increase in our own capacity. Understanding that there is an increased need for legal support, I would like to see if it would be more beneficial for us to bring some of those resources internally, as I think this may be a better use of how we are spending our budget when it comes to our legal needs.
Okay, that question noted. Oh, yeah, I guess if we have Chief Sivan or other on the call.
Happy to answer, Commissioner Coy, if I'm so permitted.
Please.
So Josh Sivan, Chief Legal Officer, and appreciate the question from Commissioner Mohammed. And I think as we've discussed with board members, balancing in-house services and legal versus outside. Typically, we go to outside counsel when there's a particular expertise area or we need a particular service quickly, and we don't anticipate that going on long term. If we're adding another FTE, it's usually saying that we're going to be increased up to that level. And I think it's always hard to predict because we largely are dependent upon responding to people who are proceeding against us, but we try to balance that carefully while being also responsible about long-term spending, and happy to follow up with commissioners on more details on that at any point. In other words, my hope, bottom line, is that these are more in the nature of one-time expenses and not ongoing expenses.
Thank you.
Appreciate the insight.
And the last item on the procurement agenda?
The last item is section 19.1. The Chief of Schools requests the board's approval of a piggyback contract with 5 vendors to provide athletic physical education supplies, including team uniforms. The estimated annual contract amount is $850,000, and the contract term is December 3rd, 2025 through May 31st, 2028, and this includes 2 one-year renewal options.
Any questions on this item from fellow commissioners?
So again, not a question. There is some insight here. And looking into this, one of the things that I found that schools with stronger PTOs historically have better equipment. And for my commissioners that are part of the Safety and Wholeness Committee, I think that this is something that carries over where there are some equity gaps that exist here that we should be paying close attention to. And if we want to ensure that our students are safe and they have their needs met, part of that work is going to be ensuring that parents are actively involved. And when it comes to athletics, I think we can do a better job at making sure that we leverage these opportunities for our students in schools as a whole. And that's it. Appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you for that additional comment and insight there, because certainly, in a procurement item, it sort of touches on so many aspects of how is that then proceeded through. And so it's a good moment to just draw attention to that. Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. Any other, that's all the procurement items, correct? Any other questions, comments, or unreadiness from commissioners as we approach the end of call? Hearing none, I just want to say thank you to all the staff that have prepared and presented and all the work that you all are doing day in and day out. Certainly at this moment in time, this week, it is a moment of gratitude and Thanksgiving, and feel grateful as both a parent and one who former teacher in city schools, for all of the work that goes on across all of our schools to ensure that all of our youth and students are being thought of, cared for, educated, and supported in their own journeys. And thank you for all of the ways that operations of different programs are administered and cared for, from the dollars to the licensure to the sustainability programs that were all highlighted here, as well as many other aspects of the work. Thank you, everyone. This is end of call.
Thank you.
Thank you.